I'm just going to take a moment to tell you about something that we're experimenting with on goCapeBreton.com. So, you know, a site like goCapeBreton.com, it really doesn't exist anywhere else in the world that we know of. So a lot of what we're doing is really experimenting to try to figure out ways that we can engage with the community. And we've spent a little bit of money trying to promote stories and other things that are happening through Facebook. But we thought, what if we could redirect some of that advertising money back into the community? Instead of sending it off to Facebook or Twitter, how can we keep that money locally? So we launched a donation fund a few days ago. And the idea is, every time somebody goes to the website and posts something, remember, anybody can post anything. Every time somebody posts something, we put $1 in the donation fund. This is our own money. We put $1 in the donation fund. Every time somebody likes a post, we put 15 cents. Every time somebody comments on it, we put another 15 cents. So the idea is, the more our community uses the website, the more of our own money we contribute into a donation fund. And when the fund hits $500, and if you go to the website, at the top of the website, you can actually see it adding up. So it's about $50 since we launched it a few days ago. We're going to donate it to a local cause. And as an experiment, we've asked 3 causes to be part of this. And the idea is, you would like a cause that you want to donate it to. But one of the things we want to do differently, you guys probably all see these contests where you have to like a cause every day. I hate those things. So we're not doing it that way. What we're doing is, you can like any cause you want. You can like them all if you want, but you can only like them one time. So you don't have to go back there every day or anything like that. And whichever cause has the most likes, when the fund hits $500, gets the $500. But here's the cool thing. The other causes that didn't win, the other 2, they keep their likes, and we reset the fund back to 0, and it starts building up to 500 again. So the cause that came second has a good chance of winning the money next time. The cause that came third gets a chance of winning the money next time. So it's not this all or nothing lottery. It's a way of continuing to give back to the community. And the 3 causes, just to give them a little plug here, is Community Cares Youth Outreach on the north side, the Undercurrent Youth Center, which is in Glace Bay and soon to be in Sydney, just across the street here actually, and Meals on Wheels. So I encourage you to go and like those causes and click around, because you're giving away our money to those groups. So please try that. All right, so we're in the home stretch here. Designing Our Future is our final panel. And the idea here is community participation and leadership for a prosperous future, a plan to move forward. So how can we as a community start doing the things we need to do to make good things happen? And we've got some interesting folks up here. I'll start on my right here. This is Wesley Colford. He's responsible for this place. Awesome. I grew up playing in the North End, so the St. Andrews Hall next door was our gym for our elementary school. Anyway, lots of stories. So Wesley is the artistic director of the Highland Arts Theatre. As well, Wesley is an actor, a song and dance man. I think Rory wrote that. Writes plays and musicals, and is fast becoming one of Cape Breton's foremost cultural ambassadors. Welcome, Wesley.
High praise. Thank you.
Doug Milburn has a PhD in engineering. I just have a regular BSc or whatever you call it. And that's hard enough, let me tell you, not a PhD. Doug Milburn is a local entrepreneur and innovator. He's co-founder and chairman of Protocase. He's also founder and chairman of Advanced Glazings, and is active in promoting the Cape Breton startup community. Welcome, Doug. Spiro Triffus. Spiro is the principal architect and president of Triffus Design Consultants. Spiro has designed many of the prominent public buildings in our community. He's also chair of the CBRM Heritage Advisory Committee, and he has insights into how well-designed spaces support community development. Welcome, Spiro. And on the end, we have Rankin McSween. Rankin is the president of New Dawn Enterprises, which is Canada's oldest community development corporation. Rankin has spent over 30 years working to build a vibrant and self-reliant community on Cape Breton Island. Welcome, Rankin. So just like our other panels, we're going to give each of our panelists, and a lot of peas popping going on here, that's probably my fault, 2 minutes to tell us what they think Then we'll open it up to you guys. You guys can ask for the microphone. You can post online there at goCapeBreton.net. Click on the live feedback button, and away we go. So Wesley, would you mind starting us off?
I think this is the most nervous I've ever been being on this stage, and I've spent most nights in the last 2 years on this stage. So thank you all for being here. I'm very intimidated with the amount of experience and knowledge and community history on this panel, in this room. I don't claim to be an expert. There are people that have been working for this community longer than I've been alive, and I'm very aware of that, and that's very intimidating. I certainly don't claim to be an expert, but I am an expert on something that a lot of millennials probably are, which is myself and what we've been working on here the last 2 years. So I'd like to offer a little story to start off as introduction. I grew up in Cape Breton. I was here through high school, went away to Toronto for training in theater, was working there because there was no work in Cape Breton in theater. And then 2 years ago, got caught up in this crazy idea that this theater might work. And one of the things actually that seduced me back was the promise, which turned out to be a false promise, of the cruise ship passengers. In theory, it sounds like a great idea. All summer, you've got dozens of ships, thousands of people every day come in with all this hot money to burn. They leave, a whole new batch of audience members come in. There's no reason that shouldn't be a great business model. Anne of Green Gables has been running in PEI for 50 years. And when I moved back for about a year and a half, we were very hotly pursuing that vein. We had a lot of promises made to us, a lot of contacts. We had hurdle after hurdle thrown, which we seemed to be overpassing, and yet nothing. It was about 6 months or a year into this that we discovered that despite our best efforts with the cruise ships, that was completely a dead end. However, our local audience was thriving. Some of you may have seen a show we did here called Heart of Steel. It was one of our biggest shows, initially at least. It was sold out run. We did it in the summer again, sold out audiences. I brought it to Toronto. It was nominated for a Door Award, which is one of Canada's greatest theatre awards that nobody knows about because nobody knows about the Canadian theatre. I say this not to brag, but we had sold about 300 tickets to that show before a word was put on paper, and that was in 2014. A year later, we had another season, and I was writing a show called Dream, and we sold 1,000 tickets before a word had been put onto paper. I say this not to brag, certainly, but as hopefully an inspiration to what I think is the theme of this night. Get it done. It has to be us, and it has to be for us. We are a non-for-profit charitable organization. We employ hundreds of people in small-scale, part-time, local people in a year, and we have zero government funding. We have zero any kind of funding. This is all possible due to the private investment of Kevin Colford and the audiences that have come to support us. If you build it, they will come. If you believe in it, if you do it, it has to happen. It has to be us. It has to be us. And I'll talk more later. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Wesley. Doug Milburn.
Okay, the list of, if I was elected dictator of Cape Breton, here's what I do. A formula for this. Build and maintain communities where people want to live. Okay? Underlies everything. Okay? Everything else, you make communities where people don't want to live, people will move away. People create wealth, the community is people. So, Wesley, Highland Arts Theatre, wow. Really, really amazing. New Dawn, years and years, amazing. So many amazing things going on here. Let's see, I gotta read my own writing, which is almost difficult. Lay out a welcome mat for those who create wealth. Okay? Use that great community to bring in people who will create wealth. Next thing, and this is always, I don't know why people have such a problem with this. Sell stuff. Promote, sell shit. Okay? Economic development. We have had more economic development. We teach it at the university. Oh, and how do we teach economic development at a university? Our economy's not developed. It's going downhill. Yet we're supposed to have expertise in it. We don't. Here's how you develop your economy. If you're private sector, you sell stuff. If you're a government community, raise taxes. We're not a government community, we're a private community. You need to sell stuff. We need a sales program and a marketing program. Last panel was brilliant. All that expertise on stage about media and social media and communications, that's the stuff. Sell stuff. They're talking people selling, Rob, selling our community. You know, great, just that's awesome. Sell stuff. Sell the community first. People who create wealth will move here. And here's what not to do. I want to keep the negativity to a minimum, but direct government intervention. Believing that politicians will solve our problems. Good Lord, my whole life. You know, government, billions of dollars, and they do everything wrong. And why do I say do everything wrong? That's just, it's self-evident. It's in front of us. Last thing, addiction to sunset industries. Ports, steel plants, coal mines, great in the past. Horses and buggies, gone. New stuff. Embrace the future.
Thank you, Doug. Spiro Triffus.
Thank you. My profession, I'm a professional architect. We've been practicing in Cape Breton for the last 30 years. For most of that period, we've been preoccupied, as a lot of planners, architects, engineers, with guidelines and a set of tools that deal mainly with growth. And what we're finding, unfortunately, is that we are starting to live in a new reality, and we have to learn as a profession and as a community to adopt and to learn a new set of guidelines, new sense of planning rituals that will deal with how we manage what is essentially a decline in our population. The reality is how we do that, and from a design point of view, we really have to manage where we go forward in the next few decades. I think to put it succinctly, in a graceful way. Aging, shrinking is not sexy unless we're losing weight, but I think there's a lot of communities that are struggling with the same issues we have, and it's how we learn to adopt our policies and how we can reuse, recycle, and this building is a perfect example. We have to realign our planning bylaws, and our attitude has to be more about thinking about more smartly, about thinking small, and it's not a bad thing. We all go through cycles. We have to just learn how to creatively readapt our condition, and I'll speak more.
Thank you, Spiro. And by the way, I've heard that if you're Greek, aging makes you more sexy. That's what I've heard. Yeah. Rankin, you're not Greek, right? Maybe you are.
So in 2 minutes, and my life seems to be in 2-minute segments lately. Anyway, one of the, I'll try and talk really quickly here to pack all this in. So if you look at, if you go 3,000 feet up and you look over Atlantic Canada, what's interesting, there are 15 economic regions. 5 of those economic regions are growing, 10 are in decline. 4 of the 5 that are growing are in provincial capital regions. 1 is not. The exception is the city of Moncton, which seems to be where the Acadians are gathering. What that seems to mean to me is that, at least in Atlantic Canada, the presence of government seems to make a huge, big difference. We're in rapid decline. What do we do about that? And that's been a preoccupation of mine for a long time, and I think there's a whole array of exciting parts to that and pieces to that. But it is interesting, if you look at the province and the island of PEI, our island neighbor, what they're doing is they had the same problem we had about 20 years ago. They've turned that around. There are now more people moving to PEI than leaving PEI. There are still people leaving, but there's more people coming in. And their employment level, we used to be ahead of them 20 years ago. Their employment level, the number of people that are working in the labor force is now 40% higher than us on a per capita basis. It seems to me islands have a tendency to be prosperous. I think part of our future has to be, we have to understand that if we can start to function as an island, if we can begin to set our agenda as an island, if we can begin to replicate and take control of ourselves and set our own agenda with the senior levels of government, I think for me that's an incredibly exciting piece of how we move forward, a new vision, a new possibility.
Thank you, Rankin. All right, well, thanks to our panelists for getting us started. So I'll look out into the audience, see if anybody's got any hands going up, or if you're tired out yet. Wow, you guys were all chatty before, all of a sudden, what's going on now? Oh, we got somebody over, Chris. Chris has his hand up there. Can we run a mic over to him? Well, hold on, Chris, we got to get you on camera here. Gotta make us look good, getting you on camera.
Hey, thanks. All right, so my question, I guess, kind of floats around the whole idea. You know, we're looking at Halifax is growing and, you know, the provincial capitals. And my question, I guess, is that growth happening at our expense, our tax dollars? Are they just drawing so much out that there's little to support their own environment? And that strategy fundamentally is going to fail over time. Correct? And I'd like the panel's view on that.
Thank you, Chris. Who would like to start with that question? So your question is the success of the other regions, is it a zero-sum game? Their success is pulling from us. Any thoughts? Rankin?
I don't care. I really don't care about Halifax. What I'm interested in is looking and seeing what will work for us. I think that for me, what the PEI experience point, I mean, there is this sense that if you haven't got a lot of people, then you're out of the game. Like the growth is going to be in the big centers. It seems to me what the PEI experience points to is that doesn't have to be the case. There is a way that this community can grow. There's people all over the world that would like to live here. The other interesting thing about the PEI experience is as people came, they were people who were able to create opportunity. They were people who tended to create small business. They were people who tended to know how to create growth or help in the creation of growth. They were the people that knew how to do investment. That's why the number of people working continues to rise. These two things seem to go together. I'm not saying this is the whole answer in terms of the vision of the future, but I think it's a fundamental dimension of it, or we can make it a fundamental dimension of our future.
Thank you, Rankin. Anyone else want to take that question, Spiro?
I'll touch on it. I think certainly there's a loss of human capital, which, going back to design, translates into what the definition of growth is, particularly in terms of the sense of community and the aesthetic of the community and how people like to live here and what they expect in terms of lifestyle and so forth. So do you have to have growth per se to have a vibrant community? In other words, do you always have to have ribbon cuttings? Do you always have to have an exponential increase in jobs? I personally don't think that that's what living in a healthy, vibrant, aesthetically pleasing community, one that you want to spend your lifetime in, is all about necessarily. I think how we manage our circumstances going forward and planning with the appropriate set of tools and bylaws and not letting buildings deteriorate, not letting, within a block or two here, we can see examples of corporate entities that have just picked up and left, and we have Jersey barriers and open gravel lots. We have buildings with plywood on them for well into a decade. I don't think that is responsible corporate citizenship, and I think we need more effective planning guidelines to help us change that around, so that if we are going to deal with the reality of declining population and shrinkage, which is a phenomenon happening all across North America, it's not just here, it's all across Canada, we really have to rethink how we go about planning and designing for that inevitable reality. So we really have to take more responsibility in how we manage that.
Thank you, Spiro. Doug, did you want to address that?
Yeah, I just, Chris, I don't see how, you know, government sucks up over 50% of our GDP. You know, it gets generated by private sector, taken up by government. In Nova Scotia, it leaves every community other than HRM. We just saw our health boards cut back, and it's basically most of it moving to there. Again and again and again, cut back out in the periphery and take it to Halifax. And if they didn't take, you know, 50 to 60% of our GDP, I'd say we could ignore them. Okay? And you can't ignore it. PEI is doing well because they have provincial government there. In fact, PEI, I know it well. My wife's from PEI. We spend a lot of time there. Fairly decentralized, works. New Brunswick had a vision of 3 cities. They build highways between all of them. You know, Nova Scotia builds nice highways up in Halifax, and it's just a bizarre, over-centralized vision. You know, the federal government sucks massive money out, spends most of it in central Canada, doesn't spend it here. How do you prosper when you're getting bled? They got to put back. Can't be bled all the time.
Thanks, Doug. Wesley, did you want to add anything?
I think
You're all right? Now, Danny Hansen had a question second, and then we'll go right to you third. If we can get this lady a microphone here after Danny, in the hat. Danny, were you going to, we have I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Go ahead, Mike, and then we'll go to Danny, and then we'll hit you.
Yeah, what I have to say sort of ties in what Rankin said, which is part of PEI's success has been that they're able to act as one. And of course, that's partly because they're their own province. I'm not sure, Rankin, if you're into Down with the Causeway and Cape Breton Liberation Army. I'm not sure about that. But what I see, I'm from North Sydney, what I see is communities kind of pitted against each other for limited resources. And we have an example right now in Sydney Mines, or sorry, North Sydney on the north side, where there was a town clock that was put into the police station was moved from North Sydney to Sydney Mines, and there was a new town clock that was put there, and there was some conflict caused because of that, and talk about our community versus your community, and you know, that type of thing. So I guess my question is, how do we have a common voice on the island? How do we not fight amongst ourselves for limited resources? One thing I'm a bit puzzled with the container, with our pursuit of a container terminal, is that Melfort had started this about 5 years before we did. That's my understanding. So I don't understand. I think there's an argument to say that maybe that we should have got behind Melfort and maybe helped them succeed, rather than trying to pull the rope the other way and completely, completely put all this money, double effort, and then maybe we could have developed our water frontage on the north side in Sydney in maybe a little bit of a different way. So I guess my question to Rankin and I guess to the panel is, how can we stop the infighting, and how can we start operating with a common agenda in Cape Breton and a kind of a common agenda and one voice?
Thank you, Mike. So how can we work together as individual communities as opposed to competing with each other? Rankin, you want to start, and then we'll move it to the rest of the panel?
First of all, I could back up. I want to correct something, or clarify something. When I say forget about Halifax, what I mean by that is, and you all know this, when you're sitting at the table provincially, that tends to be dominated by Halifax, and I think we might be. And there is this sense when you're at the table, like for many of the people whose world is Halifax, it's sort of like that world ends somewhere around Halifax County. So that's a very frustrating thing, and I certainly, in my experience, that's a very difficult kind of shift to make quickly. My experience at New Dawn in terms of moving forward, you know, early on, nobody understood New Dawn. Nobody knew what the aspiration was. A lot of people criticized it. So it was just put your head down, keep going. Just keep going. It seems to me, as a community, as Cape Bretoners, as an island, let's put our head down here. Let's figure out the vision. Let's keep going. We've got to do this. This is up to us. There's nobody coming to save us. Let's do it. We got big challenges. On the other side of those challenges, there's all kinds of possibilities. I think if we go back to Mike there, I mean, if there's a purpose, if we have a common purpose, and we understand this is about our survival as an island. On the other side of survival, yes, there is magnificent possibilities, but we have to survive. We're losing 1,000 people a year. That is going to increase. We are losing, that is not going to stop on its own. We're losing the equivalent of the town of Lewisburg every year. That's going to keep spiraling faster and faster. We need to stop that. We need to stop it. We need a strategy to stop it. I think we can do it. Matter of fact, I know we can do it. But we need to come together and decide collectively what that future is going to look like and come together and act on it. In all of Cape Breton, in terms of municipalities, in terms of First Nations. So for me, that's how we stop the fighting. We come together for a common purpose.
Thank you, Rankin. Spiro, did you want to add? Doug? Yeah, go ahead, Spiro.
I agree wholeheartedly with what Rankin just said, and to put on top of that, coming together, we really need to reevaluate how we're going to guide ourselves going into the future. Luckily, the difference between, let's say, a growing community that's growing too fast with urban sprawl and traffic congestion and a lot of chaos, where we're having the issue of depopulation, we have a luxury known as time. It's happening fast, but we do have time to properly plan for it. It's not going to happen overnight. It's happening gradually. So now's the time, and I think this session today is a good start, is collectively we have to rethink how we've gone about planning in the past. It's been more growth focused, and you know, our planning bylaws have been more about how do we control growth properly, and we don't want this here because it's going to conflict with this other growth, or visioneering strategies for, let's say, waterfronts and so on that are vast. A bit unrealistic in my opinion. We have to start thinking creatively, start thinking small and strategically, and doing it, getting our priorities straight together.
Thanks, Spiro. Doug?
So how do you stop communities from fighting with each other? I'd use the word leadership. Okay. And leadership is needed to align people. We need a common direction and common purpose. And we've been tragically misled over the last little while into this whole container port thing, which we talk about a fight in that. Look at that container port here that by their estimates 100 to 200 people working there. And we've got $50 million owed on it, and the community's whole heart into it. There's a coal mine going to open up for a little while till carbon regulations stop it, and that's going to employ 100 and some people. We employ 150 between Protocase and Advanced Glazings. And we're not even us, and I'm not saying about us. I mean, I'd be flattered if put $50 million into us. It'd be great. And here's one thing I promise you. If $50 million went into Protocase right now, we would have a modern manufacturing, like next generation manufacturing giant operating here. And that's what we do. We wouldn't have a promise, you know, $50 million to start the thing, and it's going to be $500 million or something like that. It's ridiculous. Anyway, this is our ongoing problem. Our industry has got old, they got obsolete, they got late stage, they got sunset. It's the only model we know in the whole community. This community cannot get off its addiction to sunset industries. The container business is a sunset industry. A lot of people don't understand what that means. They say, oh, there's more containers going. No, there's more coal used than there was in 1950, but there's no value in it. Okay? Got to get off that stuff. And here's, Danny Hansen said it, there's a big world. We don't have to compete with each other. There is so much opportunity out there in the world. Okay? So we need to align around that. We need some leadership, and Rankin, I'm kind of hoping we'll get some of that coming up. I'll put my own political stuff. It's not political, but go Rankin. No.
Wesley, tell us what you think, and I think there's cooperation that you're...
I'm amazed by the amount of comments people have been talking about the theater community in Cape Breton as a model for non-competitive cooperation. When we first started 2 years ago, there's a lot of people not even involved in any of these organizations that were dead set on pitting the Savoy versus the Highland Arts Theatre and the Boardmore Theatre versus the Highland Arts Theatre. And I don't think there was any truth in that. There's no truth from our end, certainly. And I heard so much talk about this is a small community. There's limited people here. There's only so much money to go around. The entertainment, of course, is a luxury. And yet, as we continue to grow, as far as I can tell, and I've worked in deep collaboration with all these organizations, in every case, these organizations have also grown. The audience we had was not taking from the Savoy, it was not taking from the Boardmore. We shared to some extent, but last night the show we did, the Confidential Musical Theatre Project, which was in collaboration with the Savoy, this the third time we'd done it. Previous two had been at the Savoy, and most of the people that came last night had not been to either of the other two. They were our Sydney-based, maybe local audience who had not been a theater-going audience. This is a very isolated example, but I think the market stands. We think of Cape Breton as being so small. We think of Halifax as being so big. I don't think it's relevant. If we have 10 people, we have 10 people, and those 10 people are not being properly utilized. The hundreds of thousands that we have in the area, in all these small communities in Nova Scotia, are not being properly utilized, and we need to stop worrying about that and find the innovative ideas that will be not a sunset market. The reason things are innovated is because it's never happened before. So what are those? Let's do them.
Thanks, Wesley. And thanks for serving as a great example for collaboration. The rising tide lifts all the boats, right? Rankin, you had a quick say, and then we'll go to Danny, and then we have you after that.
I was just I wanted to go back to a couple of comments, including Doug's. Doug really got me going about if we give Protocase $50 million, what would happen? And I really think that's a very interesting question. One of the things I've often thought about would be, wouldn't it be interesting here on this island if we went around and we spoke to everybody who had achieved some measure of success, like Protocase, and we said to Protocase, thank you very much, what do you want to do next? And what do you need to, in fact, get it done? Or we went to Highland Arts and we said, thank you very much for what you've done. What do you want to do next? How do we get under you? How do we support you? Or we went to MediaSpark and we said, thank you very much for what you've done. Where do you want to go next? How do we get under you? And how do we enable this to happen? I just think this would be quite, there's the examples. I mean, the amazing thing is, despite all our challenges, there are lovely things happening. There are just lovely things happening. So if you want to turn something, I mean, you go for the strengths. Where's the strengths? That's not to say there are other magnificent things going to eventually grow and emerge and come up behind it, but as a place to start, wouldn't that be interesting? To start identifying where the light is and trying to get under that light.
Awesome. Thank you, Rankin. And it goes a little bit to what Mike was saying as well. You've got all these passengers going over to Newfoundland. How can we take advantage of that opportunity? Lewisburg, all these people going to the Fortress. How do we take advantage? This is already happening. How do we leverage this and exploit this for the benefit of Cape Breton? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, very quick. And then you still got
I just wanted to say that whole thing about building about strengths. I think I keep hearing coming out of the economic development community. It's a tough place to do business. Tough place to do business. I've been saying this for well over a decade. Starting up in Cape Breton is difficult because of resource issues. Once you're operating, this place is an incredibly easy place to run a technology and people-based business. We have investors in Toronto who run major companies there, and they come down here and they go, wow, the people that you can keep in seats here, the talent you can attract. But if you go out there and you listen to the standard economic development line, it's like, oh, we can't attract good people to Cape Breton. And I'm going, no, this is a brilliant place to do this type of business. That's one side that maybe I should keep that as our little secret so we don't grow a big cluster and it doesn't get more difficult. It's brilliant. How much can I say that? It is the easiest place to operate a business like this. Okay, so take that. That's heresy. It's supposed to be difficult. It's difficult because if you want to operate a coal mine anywhere today, it's incredibly difficult. You want to operate a container port, Halifax, running 50%. It's incredibly difficult. It's an old industry. You want to sell horses and buggies, Amish country maybe, not around here. Okay? You want to operate a technology-based business based on people, this is a wonderful place to do it. So just mention that strength.
Okay, sure.
Sure.
I've lost control here,
I'm
folks.
sorry. This summer we had a major summer season. We had dozens of local actors and 4 very dear friends of mine from Ontario who had come in, and I suckered them into working for a pittance for 4 months. They lived in Cape Breton. They, at the end of the summer, went back home. Right now, one of them has returned already to work with us in an upcoming show. 2 more are looking at housing options. This is an amazing place to live. This is an amazing place to live. We need to keep giving us opportunities to share that.
Awesome, awesome. All right, Danny, what do you got for us? Oh, anybody help Danny with that? Oh, there you go, you're good.
Yep. There we go. Hello. Yes, I believe that would be another good session would be for you to host would be one on all the positive things that are happening in Cape Breton as a separate other conference or meeting that we have, so that we get the balances out. Okay, because like coming here today, I believe I'd like to go back to the individual from Highlands, because that's exactly what you did by bringing us here today, was get her done. And there's an example of a young man from Cape Breton, went away, got his education, come back, somehow took this old building, and my goddaughter and a lot of my friends come here a lot, okay, and without a cent of government money. So, like, I'd like to hear more from him. How like, it must have been an unbelievable gut feeling in your heart feeling to make this kind of thing happen. And that's what a lot of companies' success is, risk-taking. Thank you.
Wesley, when you're thinking about doing this, was it scary? Did you have all the answers?
No, I still don't have the answers. The fact that we've had the success we've had daily baffles me. I've told this story before, but I completely have to give credit to our sound man of the night, my dad, Kevin Colford. This was all his idea. I heard about it over a Christmas dinner a couple years ago. I thought it was insane. I thought it was, I didn't think that there was a population. I didn't think that there was the interest. The kinds of theater that I was working on in Toronto and had studied, it never, or at least recently, had not happened here, certainly, never on a professional level. And I came back to do one show. The audience reaction, outreach, the support, the people completely blew me away. And I've been here since for 2.5 years, I guess. I think you have to dream big. I think you have to certainly pursue your passion. I love Cape Breton. I grew up in Cape Breton. I left at 16, which is a very difficult decision, to go to the only place I thought in Canada where I could work in the way I wanted to work, with the people I wanted to work at that level. And that's something we're still always striving for, and certainly will never be satisfied with. But we had 400 people last night come to a show that they didn't know what the show was until they got here. I already talked about the fact that we had 1,000 tickets sold for a musical that was not written. I had not put a word to paper at New Year's, and the show was in March. We continue to do that, and that's, you know, I'm still baffled by the support. Clearly, this has been something that's been needed. Clearly, the fact that people continue to check us out is amazing. And going back to competition, there's still so many people who don't even know, have never stepped foot, who either haven't heard of us or, oh yes, I saw the thing in the paper or whatever. But we can only grow. We've got 100,000 odd people that are close enough that could be a market. Going back to the Savoy, for most of their big shows, they do maybe 3 nights. They have 800 seats. That's 2,400 people. There's a lot of market that has never been to a theater show. We want you to come. Those of you in the room, we want you to come. We make it affordable. We'll make it worth your while, I promise.
Awesome. So the next symposium, let's call the next symposium "Got Her Done."
Where's this coming from? Oh, is that?
Got her done.
Got her done. Well, Wesley's describing, by the way, is jumping out of an airplane and then figuring out how to build a parachute on the way down. my most patient person in the audience. And your name is?
Marion Whitcomb.
Marion.
I'm really glad that Melford has been discussed here today. I did a project at NSCC on the container board and actually went over and looked at the properties, the ancestral properties of the people who were expropriated and kicked out for that project. And certainly that would not lend itself to community cohesiveness. I just thought I'd mention that in passing because it was very tragic to see. As an environmentalist and an ecologist, I wrestle with the idea of development in the face of our actual dropping numbers and infrastructure problems. I'm very glad to hear you speak because you're speaking to the realities. And also the growing desire for sustainability. And that would mean protection of our natural assets that are a strong draw for people here. And I wonder if we could not reframe this discussion and this idea in the context of prosperity. It doesn't have to be profit, grow, 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 grow. Cape Breton is pretty special as it is.
Thank you, Marianne. So we're almost out of time, so I'm going to let you guys respond, and then we might let you with some closing remarks. And Doug.
I was going to say that through this in business, the whole environmental thing, we run a natural lighting company. My head's very much in that space, and it's a tough thing. If you want to, it's a balancing act, right? You know, too much. Let's move all the people out. We'll sustain the natural environment. You want to sustain your community, you kind of have to sustain your population. We're in big trouble because of our demographics, because we're 30 years too late having this meeting. Right? And I totally agree with figuring out how to live in stability. But, you know, on the flip side, I was in Waterloo. I spent 10 years in Waterloo, Ontario. The place has grown. It's crazy. It's miserable. They've made themselves miserable. That's not my goal when I talk about economic development, prosperity here. But neither is the goal to have a declining and aging, no young people around, and, you know, doors slamming because there's no young people to be in them. That's not it either. So that idea of that magic zero population growth, grow in quality, not in quantity, totally behind that. Yeah, and a good discussion on that, bringing that into, but it's not decline. It's not managing decline, not interested in that. I got to move away if we're just going to manage decline.
Right, and again, particularly protection of the built heritage. We've seen some real tragedies here in Sydney in the last couple of years. So.
Which is this building we're in. I love it. Yeah.
Spiro.
Matthew, thank you. Just want to point out that the three gentlemen with me here on stage, they're all involved in adaptive reuse, renewal, reusing, recycling. This building, perfect example. Doug, we recently worked with you in reusing the former grocery store, converting that into a new manufacturing, and Rankin working with New Dawn on the preserving the Holy Angel. So enhancing the quality of life and dealing with our new reality doesn't mean that you know, we can't make the best of what is here. We really don't need new buildings all the time, new infrastructure, new ribbon cutting. We really have to learn how to celebrate the best of what we have and make strategic decisions going forward, and properly planning and having a proper set of guidelines and bylaws that will help enhance and preserve the best, and not let things degenerate and lie fallow and be an eyesore because we have absentee ownership and so forth. So thank you for your efforts today, Matthew. Yeah.
Thank you, Spiro. And Doug, you said you hoped this happened 30 years ago, but I'm only 29 years old. So I don't know how that could have happened.
That's the problem.
It would be helpful to have communities get together and meet and identify what their key assets are.
This is a community values thing.
Yeah.
Cape Breton's like tragic. Our downtown was beautiful.
Right.
You know, and it's declined. Buildings have been torn down. You know, there was a lot of stone and brick, you know, sort of more durable materials, now put clapboard over them. The yacht club's been, you know, destroyed, and there's little shacks, little $250,000 shacks put up all over it, and it's just like no vision.
People don't come here to see trailers.
All right, so thank you, everyone. I'm going to allow our panelists another minute to close off the discussion for us. We'll start with Rankin and then work our way down the aisle.
Well, I mean, I like that notion that we're meeting 30 years too late, but the miracle is we're meeting. I mean, that's the miracle that this is happening. I think that, do you know what? Here's what's I'm thinking of right now. I went to gatherings for so long, and always on the stage, the important person on the stage was the government person, eh? And to think that we're sitting here today, you're doing this event today, and there's been no government person.
Saturday. They don't work Saturdays.
I mean, this is not a condemnation of that sector. That is not a condemnation at all. I mean, government is important, but it doesn't lead community. It doesn't do that well. That is not its gift. That's all I'm saying. I think at this fascinating moment, it's sort of like there's white space. There's white space, and there's this moment for this community to finally begin to take ownership and responsibility for itself. There's finally a white space to enable that. And to think, I guess I'm just so proud to be part of it, and I'm really feeling this incredible sense of gratitude that Matthew and his team have called us together to have this experience and to take this step today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rankin. Spiro.
I think going forward, really, it is up to the people to pull together their thoughts and to come up with a strategy that is taken to the government and to the politicians, because that is the only way, really, that there is going to be any political will to realign what has been previously in the past been all about growth and ribbon cuttings and doing new infrastructure. The people really have to say, look, those modalities are gone now. We're dealing with new realities, and we really have to go back to the drawing board and rethink our planning guidelines and our design values and communicate that in the form of policy creation by the local governments that the politicians can get behind and feel comfortable in standing up to. Because without having the people involved in proper policy planning, there's going to always be resistance to change. And that resistance usually comes in the form of lobbying to the political parties and to the politicians. And you don't want that force coming to bear down on staff that is working to enforce these policies. So we really have to, as citizens and as a group, make our ideas known to the politicians and to the political parties that are involved in creating these guidelines for us.
So that's an action item for us as citizens, is to let our leadership know that we expect more in terms of maintaining our community spaces and the things that are part of that.
That's right.
Thank you. Doug.
Personally, I say forget the politicians. Seriously, lifetime of it. We got two wonderful federal members. I know the two of them. And I'm going, our community's been in crisis forever, and I'm going to go say, when was the last time they got off their ass and did anything that would change our direction as a community? Like nice guys, right? That's good. They got a good pension coming. Everything's good, okay? And our community's going in a direction. If we do the same things today that we did yesterday, we shall get the same results, okay? And yesteryear we lived off Sunset Industries. We milked them. They're done. You can't enter a market in Sunset. I mean, you live off it for a while, but you can't do that. Got to get over it. And this idea, we got a whole community whose attention is galvanized behind the fact that there's going to be a port in here. Despite that, none of the message, when you connect the dots, it doesn't add up to what they say it is, if it ever happened. And it's like, let's get off that. Secondly, we just said it here. Let's do what works. Okay? Get critical mass of people doing positive things, and we're almost there. Okay? Which means get out, start a business, sell something. Okay? Modern things people want to pay for, not horses and buggies, things that people want to pay for. Okay? And today, go do that. There is more economic opportunity in the world now than there ever was. Why do we have our heads stuck somewhere dark? You know, wanting to do what we did in yesteryear. Get over it. Go out there, and it's people that do that. Okay? So build great communities. Don't sell downtown waterfront parks to old-fashioned industries that aren't going to do anything and create a community without a downtown park. God, you know. Okay. So anyway, critical mass, and it's coming. It's on its way. It's happening.
Thank you, Doug. Wesley.
Thank you. The third major driving force behind this building in the past 2.5 years has been my partner in every sense, Hilary Scott, who's also a under 30 Ontario girl who now has been living here for 2.5 years and has a 902 phone number. So she has a great saying that we both use a lot. Her and I both have very high standards for ourselves and also are chronic procrastinators. And in such occasions, she'll say, the second best time to do anything is now. Yes, we should have had this meeting 30 years ago, perhaps, and certainly people have been trying, and not to dismiss that, and there have been other such meetings. But regardless, we're having it now. We're here today, and thank God we're doing it today, and not when there's only 5 people left in Cape Breton and we're worrying about sustainability and revitalization. There are so many beautiful buildings on this street that are empty, that are completely empty. Every day, I was sitting at Governor's the other day. There's a whole building I'd never even realized was there, boarded up, and probably for 20 years. Let's do something. If this building we're in had been torn down, what a tragedy that would have been. But there are so many buildings that continue to be in disuse. And we need to use what we have better. We need to use what we have smarter. Right now, the fact that we're an island, this is in some ways the best time. We get the benefit of being a little bit isolated, and we get the luxury of living in this beautiful place. But with technology, we can reach anywhere in the world. Rob is a living example with the Trump bump. There's no barriers. We can create things, we can imagine things, we can sell things to anyone in the world by clicking a button. I can create a web series that anyone in the world can see for free that I can make money on. That's incredible. Why aren't we using those resources? Why aren't we using the resources that have been sitting in complete disregard for many years? We can't keep waiting. We can't keep wanting. We have to do it. Get her done.
We're going to turn you into our logo. I think that Wesley's going to be our new logo for this event.
Rankin, watch out. Next. No.
So stay seated. Stay seated. I'd like to thank Rankin McSween, Spiro Triffus, Wesley Colford, and Doug Milburn for this great discussion that we just had. And this is going to conclude our event, so I'm just going to give a couple of closing remarks here, and then we'll go home and get her done, right? Probably eat first and then get her done. So I'd like to thank our volunteers and our sponsors. Again, goCapeBreton.com, President Richard Lorway for funding this, Nigel Kearns for also contributing his expertise and helping fund this as well, this event. The Colfords for this amazing facility, Crew Productions for the great videography that they're doing, NovaStream, Pepsi, and Connors for providing equipment and refreshments, and the Media Spark team, and my wife Joni for still being with me. By the way, I'll give you my secret to a long marriage. We've been together for more than half our lives. It's have lots of debt, right? Because then she can't leave you, because she's got to take half of it with her. And if you ever see her leave me, you know we're making some money at that point, right? So just to close, we have that last slide there. Here we go. Just to close with our message. Remember, this is being videotaped, as you know. We're going to put it up online. We'll send you emails and all sorts of wonderful stuff. The conversation is going to continue at GetHerDone.net and goCapeBreton.com. And remember, the success of a community is not dependent on big wins. It's about the small wins that happen every day between friends, neighbors, coworkers, and community. Many little wins add up to a big win. Less talk, more action. Get her done. Thanks for coming. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Leslie.